And I'd love to kind of talk a little bit about your chess background. So we were having a little banter back and forth yesterday about The Queen's Gambit, which is a new show on Netflix, which everyone should check out. And I just thought it was really fitting that it launched in the week that I was going to interview you.
Yeah, it's so funny. I saw your tweet and I had literally just finished the first episode of it, watching it. So yeah, I grew up playing chess, and I think some people say, yeah, I used to play chess as a kid, but I actually, that was my childhood, a really, really big part of it, which meant, similar to as you see in the show, she's studying it, she's playing all the time, she's thinking about it, she's, in the first episode, she does the simultaneous, they call it in the show, and that was my childhood, where I would go, and for many weekends throughout the year I'd play in tournaments. I had a coach that would come weekly. My sister also played. My dad was very involved. We ended up playing on the Canadian national team, so we would travel for it, similar to young kids who play for a soccer team. I played for chess team, so I also played in my elementary school. We would go and during the week play other elementary schools, and so it was a very big part of my childhood. And it's so funny watching the show because there are so many things. I was watching with my boyfriend last night, and I was explaining, he's never played chess before, I was explaining all these rules, and I was like, oh my god, there's so many things that I just don't even remember learning because I had learned at such a young age. And I was like, wow, it's so interesting to be teaching this to someone, because for me, I don't even remember that kind of inflection point where I started learning chess because it was so early on.
I know you've talked a little bit about some of the things it kind of taught you. I don't know if anything really comes to mind straight away.
Yeah, it's funny because at the time it was just my life, right? You just play chess, I grew up doing this. But looking back in hindsight, there's so many things that I can kind of look back to now and say that really very tangibly impacted the way that I think or the way that I view things. And two things in particular. So one is this concept of almost ownership, and the reason for that is because unlike, games like poker, for example, where there's a lot of luck, there is no luck in chess. You literally, you win if you're the better player, right? And you also have this framework of kind of within a chess game, there's only so much that you can control, right? But you have to own the moves that you make, and you have to own that relative to the moves that other people can make. And it's kind of reflective of life in some ways, where you can within other games say, oh, within poker, people say they have bad beats, right? They played the right move, but the cards didn't, face up the way that they wanted them to. But in chess, you can't say that, right? You actually, something that a lot of people don't know if they've never played competitive chess is after a competitive chess game, most of the time you will sit down with your coach and you will go through the game again, and you will actually say, that is where you made the mistake, or that is where you put yourself in a bad position and ultimately led to, your downfall throughout the game. But it's this amazing environment where even though it's a very complex game, there is a right move and there is no luck, right? If you lose, it's on you for making the wrong moves. And so I think early on, it really taught me that in this, again, complex game, if you work hard and if you learn to become a better chess player, if you study it, if you study your games after you win or lose, that's when you get better. You can only get better through, basically more study, more play, more investment in the game, and you can't blame your losses on anything. So that was a really interesting thing that, again, at the time I don't know if I fully recognized, but later I think it really helped me view life as this thing where it's with any skill, if you put the time in, I view it as, I think anyone can master anything. And I think that chess kind of set the groundwork for that. And then the second part, which is maybe related, is that there's no bias in chess, and there's bias in everything, but what I mean by this is just from a very early age. So I started playing, I don't even remember when, probably when I was 5 or something, but very early on, when I was 7 years old, I'd be sitting, facing for something that a lot of people don't realize as well, is chess games, especially competitive chess games, can go for 3 hours. And a 7-year-old sitting in front of a, sometimes 50-year-old playing a 3-hour chess game, it's kind of, you see the kind of environment in the show, actually, where you see this little girl facing this older man, and it was really, really game-changing for me, I think, to early on realize that if I invested the time, effort, again, into this thing, it didn't matter how old I was, didn't matter if I was a female or male, race didn't matter. It was really, you show up to the chessboard, and again, what moves do you play? Your game represents how you are valued or perceived, right? Your game is what people, judge you for, not all those other things. So I think it really set me on this interesting path to later. Now I work in tech. I've been in many environments where I don't see a lot of other women, or I'm younger than most people in those environments. And I think chess really early set this environment for me to have that mindset where it's like I can show up even if there is kind of this strange environment where you have, again, for example, like a 7-year-old little girl facing a 50-year-old man. So I think those two things, the fact that there's no luck and at least no bias within the game itself, really set the stage for how I view a lot of things in life today.
I love that. So like, to summarize, you said no bias, there's no bias and there's no luck, essentially. And it kind of formed your opinion, maybe not opinion, but your way that you would enter the rest of your life, I guess, and how you would embrace and like take on challenges and stuff like that. I guess the follow-up question to that is, how do you feel like that actually differs to real life now? Because you talked about no bias, no luck, whereas the real world does have a bit of that, of course. Well, I don't know. I'm curious for your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely true that the game of chess is not the game of life, and there are differences there.
Yeah.
But to call out some of the things that you just mentioned, so yes, within chess, it's like I can control what I can control. And I think that has influenced my view of life in that there are a lot more kind of hardballs or things that you get in life that you don't get in chess. But it still taught me chess, like this concept of when you play white or black, you still can't control what the other person plays, right? But you can put yourself in the best situation regardless of what is thrown at you, right? Regardless of what the other player, plays, you can set yourself up such that you are best equipped to handle whatever is thrown your way. And again, life is much more complicated and hard than a game of chess, but I think I take the same mentality in that, I think, for example, we're in a very interesting climate right now, and a lot of people are complaining, rightfully so, that they're not in a good spot, but you can always still ask yourself the question, like, what can I control, right? And it's, for example, women in tech is a very, potentially touchy subject. I know there is a lot of bias within that space, but instead of purely complaining about it, I ask myself, like, what can I do to change this? What can I do to help this? What can I do to support other women? And I think that's a more helpful question in general for us to just within life. Like, yes, there are biases. Yes, there are things we can't control. But I think you're in a much more empowering place if you just instead ask the question, like, okay, what can I control? How can I respond? Again, imagine just a chess game. What moves can I play that put me in the best situation, regardless of what is thrown back my way? I find, not with every, situation, but often, like, what they're trying to change someone else. And most of the time you can't change someone else's opinion, or at least in trying to force it, you end up not being able to, right? And so again, I like to view things as like, what can I do to influence the people who are willing to be influenced, and also like how can I do so in a way where they want to come along, right? So just again coming back to this idea of like, what really do I have the power to change or not? Like, imagine the equivalent of what some people do in real life in chess, of being like, hey sir, you need to move this piece here, right? Like, I don't like how you're playing that game, like, please do this. And obviously the response is like, no, this is my game, right? And so you just need to view things within the realm of what you can control. And that's really empowering once you realize that, because then you're not just like running against walls being like, why won't someone listen to me? You're taking control of what you can, and you can do a surprising amount when you're, equipped with that, right? And you focus on that instead of trying to change someone else's opinion.
I love that. Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, great way to start.